Hey guys, tonight we drift into a world where the air smells of crushed herbs, sizzling incense, and just a whisper of mischief. You probably won't survive this without at least a chuckle or a shiver. You trudge along uneven cobblestones in a bustling ancient marketplace, sunlight bouncing off clay jars and woven baskets stacked high with dried flowers, powdered roots, and liquids that glimmer like captured sunlight. The air is heavy with the scent of roses and myrrh, and every stall seems to whisper promises. This potion will make her glance your way, or one sip and he'll never leave your side. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your location and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself drawn to a small, shadowed stall tucked between a loud cloth merchant and a vendor selling shimmering blue pottery. A wizened woman with eyes like dark honey beckons you closer. She's grinding a mixture of dried petals and crushed gemstones, muttering words in a tongue you don't understand. Historians still argue whether these words were actual incantations or just clever marketing to sell more potions, but either way, the scent is intoxicating. You watch her press the mixture into tiny clay bottles, sealing them with wax and sometimes adding a strand of her hair or yours if you dare. The variety of love spells in this marketplace is staggering. There are simple charms for a fleeting flirtation, more elaborate drafts intended to bind someone's heart for a lifetime, and a few experimental concoctions rumored to make a person obsess over the wrong object entirely. One bottle contains crushed pomegranate seeds steeped in honey, believed by the ancients to awaken desire because the fruit itself embodies fertility. Nearby, a small heap of powdered snail shells is said to draw affection as surely as a river draws fish to its banks. You wrinkle your nose at this, but you also notice the faint shimmer of curiosity in the eyes of other passers-by. They can't help but wonder if it works. You wander through the marketplace, brushing your fingers over fragrant bundles of herbs tied with red thread. Lavender for devotion, vervain for passion, and damiana, a leaf reputed to stir lust. You remember reading that the Greeks often used such herbs in garlands for their lovers, wearing them not just for fragrance but as portable, personal love charms. Some of these beliefs were widespread, others fringe, like the claim that swallowing a single powder made from crushed ambergris could ensure someone dreams only of you. It's absurd, you think, yet the gleam of hope in the eyes around you makes you pause. Everywhere you turn, there is movement and sound. Children chase one another between the stalls, women haggle over the price of saffron and petals, and men test small phials by uncapping and sniffing. A small black cat weaves through your ankles, its fur catching the sunlight like spilled ink. In some traditions, these cats were thought to carry love spells themselves, silently ensuring that the intentions of the apothecaries reach their targets. You can't help but laugh at the idea of a feline cupid prowling the streets of a hot, dusty city. You pause at a stall draped with faded silk. On the counter lies a curious mixture of crushed roses, frankincense, and a few tiny bones, perhaps bird or rodent, it's hard to tell. The apothecary claims it attracts true love by linking the spirits of the hearts involved. Modern scholars debate whether such rituals were actually practiced or if they were largely symbolic, meant to give participants the comforting illusion of control over fate. Still, you feel a peculiar pull as you lean closer, inhaling the heady mixture of smoke and petals. Your pulse quickens, but it's mostly from excitement and maybe a touch of fear. Among the market's shadows, you spot a youth timidly approaching an older vendor. He's holding a small pouch, clearly nervous. The vendor smiles knowingly, extracts a tiny vial filled with a glowing amber liquid, and whispers instructions about how to pour it into wine during a dinner. You imagine the chaos this could cause, or the blushes, or maybe the awkward questions later. It's a delicate game, this art of love. A little too much and you risk suspicion or scandal, too little and nothing stirs. You realize the balance is as precise as any chef's spice blend, though with a far more dramatic payoff. As you continue, you notice the layering of scents: honey, rose, musk, and something earthy that reminds you faintly of the riverbanks outside the city. This blending is deliberate. Each fragrance is designed to work not just on the senses, but supposedly on the very soul of the intended beloved. Some apothecaries even burned incense made from crushed pearls and amber to enhance the potency of their mixtures. You can't verify these claims, but you do feel something. Not necessarily love, but perhaps a heightened awareness, as if the city itself is leaning in to watch you. A stray breeze rustles a banner overhead, revealing a small painted sign: "Love potions guaranteed or your heart back." You laugh out loud. Historians still argue whether such guarantees were ever seriously intended or if they were purely theatrical marketing gimmicks to entice buyers. Either way, the sense of hope and anticipation here is palpable. You notice that some patrons linger by stalls for hours, discussing effects, swapping stories, and occasionally whispering to themselves as if the potion were already working. You start to realize that this marketplace is not just about ingredients, it's a theater of desire, a space where human longing is as tangible as the clay jars under your fingertips. As the sun sinks lower, shadows stretch across the cobblestones, mingling with the steam rising from small cauldrons. You step back and take in the scene, a market alive with scents, murmurs, and the quiet, hopeful plodding of countless hearts. Even if none of these potions truly work, the very act of seeking them, of imagining their effects, binds the people here together. Love in all its messy, unpredictable glory has been captured, not in a bottle but in the ritual itself, in the shared desire and belief that something magical could happen tonight. You can't help but feel part of it, a quiet participant in an age-old dance of hope, longing, and maybe just a pinch of foolishness. You drift along the winding banks of the Nile, where the water shimmers like liquid gold in the late afternoon sun. Papyrus reeds sway lazily in the breeze, and the cries of waterfowl echo over the rippling surface. In this ancient land where life is defined by the rhythm of the river, you find yourself drawn to a small cluster of workshops tucked behind mud brick houses. Here, the scent of fragrant oils, rose, lotus, myrrh mingles with the earthy aroma of sun-baked clay. You probably won't survive wandering too close without tripping over a stray pottery shard or accidentally stepping into someone's ritual preparation, but you tread carefully, drawn by curiosity and the faint promise of hidden knowledge. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like it, share your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You approach a stall where an elderly woman with intricately braided hair grinds a mixture of honey, myrrh, and powdered lotus petals. She smiles knowingly and offers you a tiny clay cup. The liquid glistens, capturing the sunlight like molten amber. This, she says, is a potion for drawing love, a concoction known to ancient Egyptians as sa'ib, or binder of hearts. Historians still argue whether these mixtures actually influenced emotions or were mainly psychological tools, but the precision with which each ingredient is combined suggests careful experimentation over centuries. Honey, for instance, wasn't just a sweetener. Its sticky consistency was symbolic, a metaphor for binding someone's heart. Lotus petals, soft and fragrant, represented purity and beauty, while myrrh was thought to carry spiritual resonance, connecting the human soul to the divine. Some fringe beliefs went further. Ancient texts describe adding powdered crocodile teeth to enhance courage and love, or using a bit of ground scarab shell to ward off unwanted rivals. You wrinkle your nose at the thought, but the symbolic weight is undeniably potent. Nearby, a young scribe sits cross-legged on a mat, meticulously sketching hieroglyphs on papyrus. He's recording the recipes and ritual steps, likely for the wealthy or politically influential. Some of these spells involved reciting a chant 3 times at sunrise while holding the potion to the lips of the intended beloved. Others required subtle gestures, like placing a small amulet in the path of a loved one, ensuring that fate itself would nudge them closer. The line between magical influence and simple human psychology is blurry here, and modern scholars debate whether the success of these rituals was based on spiritual power, coincidence, or just sheer persistence and attentiveness. You wander closer to a low platform where a few women sit cross-legged, arranging small bowls of herbs and oils. Each scent is deliberately chosen: rose for love, cinnamon for passion, and coriander for long-lasting affection. You notice one bowl contains ground saffron, bright, golden strands that seem to capture the sunlight. Some fringe accounts suggest that merely inhaling saffron-infused incense could make someone irresistible to others, while mainstream historians consider this an overstatement, more about the sensory experience than actual magical effect. Still, you can't deny the intoxicating aroma, and for a moment, you imagine the effect it might have if truly potent. You step away, brushing your fingers across bundles of linen-wrapped herbs. Lavender, vervain, and juniper all sway slightly, filling the air with soft, sweet fragrances. You recall stories of Egyptian priestesses using similar herbs in personal rituals, creating intimate connections with their partners or influencing potential lovers from afar. Some of these rituals were simple, almost meditative, others more elaborate, involving offerings to deities such as Hathor or Isis, whose domains included love, fertility, and beauty. The choice of ritual depended on the desired outcome: fleeting flirtation, enduring affection, or even reconciliation after betrayal. As you meander through the riverside workshops, a gentle breeze carries the smell of baked bread and incense together. Children play nearby, tossing small clay dolls into the water, perhaps as symbolic gestures for their own fledgling affections. You spot a vendor balancing a tray of tiny amulets carved from carnelian and turquoise. One amulet is said to protect the wearer from unrequited love, while another is meant to attract admiration from strangers. Historians still argue whether these amulets were widely believed to hold power or functioned primarily as tokens of social identity and personal intention, but the presence of so many suggests they were culturally significant, at the very least. Further along, you notice a small courtyard where women perform an evening ritual. Candles flicker, casting long shadows across the stone floor, and a soft chant rises and falls like the river itself. They dip petals into a mixture of honey and oil, then anoint themselves or small statues representing their desired partners. Some fringe texts even suggest using a mixture of milk and powdered precious stones, believed to sweet a lover's thoughts. You can't help but chuckle at the extravagance, though you secretly admire the creativity and devotion involved. Everywhere you turn, there's a sense of intentionality. Each step, each scent, each carefully chosen word is designed to create an atmosphere conducive to desire and connection. Even if the metaphysical effect is uncertain, the rituals themselves foster attention, mindfulness, and subtle social signaling, a kind of early psychological alchemy. You watch as a young couple shyly exchanges a glance over the shoulder of a vendor, perhaps influenced by a scent or the simple energy of anticipation. Love in this place is crafted with care, layered in meaning, and woven into daily life. As dusk falls, the Nile reflects a palette of burnt orange and deep purple, the water catching the last light of the sun. You take a deep breath, inhaling the mingled aroma of herbs, oils, and baked clay. Even if no potion truly changes hearts tonight, the act of crafting love itself has been enchanting, a ritual of attention, imagination, and hope that transcends time. You feel the subtle pull of centuries past, a connection to all those who sought affection, used scent and ritual as their tools, and whispered their desires into the world. You wander past marble columns and faded frescoes, feeling the sun-warmed stone beneath your feet as you enter a quiet Greek courtyard. The air smells faintly of olive oil, crushed herbs, and the lingering tang of the Aegean Sea, and you notice tiny bits of pollen drifting lazily in the soft breeze. You probably won't survive this journey without tripping over a marble fragment or accidentally stepping into a stray festival offering, but that's part of the charm. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and post your location and local time for context. It's always fun to know where everyone is experiencing this with me. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's continue drifting into the story. You step into a temple courtyard dedicated to Aphrodite, goddess of love, where priestesses stir fragrant oils in bronze bowls. The mixture contains crushed rose petals, a hint of mint, and intriguingly small traces of crushed laurel leaves. You watch as they whisper softly, weaving words into the air in a language both familiar and strange. Historians still argue whether these chants were truly intended as magical incantations or if they functioned more as ritualized affirmations that reinforced social bonds and courtship practices. Either way, the atmosphere hums with intention. Nearby, a Greek apothecary arranges small glass vials on a marble counter, each containing liquids of deep crimson, amber, or soft green. One, a ruby red mixture, is said to arouse desire by blending pomegranate juice with crushed herbs such as thyme and marjoram. Some fringe traditions suggest adding powdered deer antler to the mix to ensure a lover's fidelity, though mainstream scholarship questions whether such additions were ever widely practiced. You can't help but notice the theatricality. The way each ingredient is layered like a story, each scent building upon the next to create a multisensory experience. You meander through the courtyard, brushing against hanging ivy and small statues of Eros. Some women carry delicate garlands of myrtle and jasmine, weaving them into hair or offering them to prospective lovers. Others sprinkle powdered herbs over small clay figurines representing their desired partners. These actions aren't just symbolic, they communicate intent, hope, and desire in a tactile, performative way. You remember hearing that some Greek courtiers would leave offerings at Aphrodite's altars before attempting bold confessions of love. The line between divine intervention and human initiative blurs beautifully here. A young man kneels nearby, nervously arranging tiny bowls of honey, cinnamon, and crushed rose petals. The priestess whispers instructions about when to chant, when to sprinkle, and when to offer the potion to the beloved's threshold. The belief is that timing is everything: sunrise or sunset, waxing or waning moon, even the position of Venus. All could enhance or diminish the potency of the spell. You grin at the precision. Modern scholars debate how seriously these astrological elements were taken versus their performative or psychological function, but the dedication of the participants is undeniable. You pause by a small fountain where water trickles softly over marble, carrying the scent of herbs as it flows. The priestesses dip petals into the water, allowing the fragrances to mingle and carry their intentions downstream, literally and metaphorically. Some fringe accounts describe using traces of hair or nail clippings to personalize the magic, ensuring that the desired affection would be drawn specifically to the intended individual. You wrinkle your nose at this, yet you also understand the psychology. Any act that gives you a sense of agency over love is seductive. Moving on, you notice a table covered in tiny bronze mirrors and polished gemstones. Aphrodite's devotees believed that mirrors could reflect desire back into the hearts of those gazing upon them, while gemstones held symbolic power, garnets for passion, amethyst for loyalty, and carnelian for courage in love. You remember reading that some Greek lovers would carry these stones in pouches or hang them in their homes as silent reminders of their intentions. Historians still argue whether these objects were thought to be genuinely magical or served primarily as social signals of romantic interest, but their prevalence suggests they were culturally significant. A mischievous breeze rustles the robes of the priestesses, carrying the mingled scents of herbs and oils through the courtyard. You notice the faint gleam of a hidden vial tucked beneath the folds of one's robe, perhaps reserved for the boldest or most desperate of lovers. Some fringe traditions even describe creating drafts that could provoke obsession rather than mere attraction, a dangerous path in which one misstep might lead to scandal, or worse. You chuckle quietly, imagining the chaos that could ensue if these recipes fell into the wrong hands. As the afternoon stretches lazily into evening, you wander past mosaics depicting romantic encounters and mythological love stories. The visual art reinforces the sensory rituals around you, forming a holistic tapestry where love is both celebrated and engineered. Even the faint sound of lyres strumming somewhere in the distance adds rhythm to the unfolding scene. You realize that Greek love magic was as much about participation, imagination, and ritualized social interaction as it was about any mystical efficacy. It was about creating a space where desire, intention, and storytelling intertwined, making the act of loving almost performative. You linger a while longer, inhaling the mingled aromas of herbs, oils, and riverborne pollen. You can almost imagine walking away with a vial of ruby red liquid tucked into your robe, a garland in hand, and a heart full of hope or trepidation. Even if the magic itself is uncertain, the act of preparing, presenting, and anticipating has a powerful effect. The participants themselves are changed, emboldened, or soothed simply by taking part. The energy of the courtyard hums quietly around you, carrying whispers of countless unspoken wishes and fleeting passions across time. You step into a sun-drenched Roman villa, the stones underfoot warm from midday heat, the faint scent of olive oil and crushed herbs lingering in the air. Outside, a mosaic depicts Venus rising from the sea, her eyes cast toward unseen lovers, while inside, the soft chatter of servants and courtiers fills the air. You probably won't survive wandering through these winding corridors without bumping into a merchant or spilling a vial of potion, but the thrill of discovery pulls you forward. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you haven't yet, post your location and local time. There's something fun about imagining people following along from across the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's continue your journey. You find yourself drawn to a small alcove where an apothecary arranges glass vials of shimmering liquids on a polished wooden table. Roman love potions, you realize, were often elaborate mixtures of wine, herbs, honey, and occasionally more daring ingredients. A touch of blood, animal parts, or resins collected from distant lands. Historians still argue whether these ingredients were genuinely believed to work on human emotions or if their inclusion was largely symbolic and theatrical. Yet the precision and care suggest a serious intent behind their creation. One vial, a deep crimson, contains crushed rose petals, cinnamon, and a trace of saffron. The apothecary explains that this potion is for capturing attention, a way to make a prospective lover notice you even amidst a crowded villa. Nearby, a more exotic concoction includes wine steeped with vervain and powdered shells, believed to draw enduring affection or, in fringe traditions, obsession. You wrinkle your nose at this and chuckle quietly, imagining the scandal that could arise if someone accidentally consumed the wrong draft. Walking further, you notice a courtyard where women arrange small bowls of oils and herbs atop marble pedestals. One mixture, a blend of honey and crushed roses, is meant for gentle persuasion. Another, darker and more potent, is whispered to sway even the most stubborn hearts. Roman rituals often incorporated not just ingredients but careful timing. Offerings and anointments performed during the day at sunset, or when Venus was particularly prominent in the sky. Scholars debate whether these astrological aspects were truly believed to enhance magical potency or simply structured the rituals with symbolic meaning, but the participants clearly took them seriously. A young patrician approaches a bronze basin, dipping his fingers into a fragrant mixture of honey and ground herbs, then rubbing it on a small clay figure representing his desired beloved. Some fringe traditions even called for the inclusion of a personal item, a lock of hair, a tiny scrap of clothing, to personalize the effect. You grin at the meticulous attention to detail. There's a delicate absurdity to these practices, yet you can't deny the psychological impact of investing energy and intention into them. In a quieter corner, a Roman matron offers small amulets carved from carnelian, garnet, and amber. Each is imbued with a specific charm, passion, fidelity, or gentle attraction. Patrons place them under pillows, carry them in pouches, or leave them on thresholds. You notice one young woman tying a small amulet into her hair as she prepares to meet a prospective suitor. Historians still argue whether these amulets were believed to be genuinely effective or functioned more as talismans of hope, yet their widespread use hints at deep cultural resonance. You wander past frescoes depicting amorous encounters, noting the care with which every scene is painted, lovers entwined, glances exchanged, and gestures imbued with meaning. The art mirrors the ritualistic approach of the apothecaries. Love is both observed and enacted, celebrated and engineered. Even small domestic rituals reinforce social bonds, encourage attentiveness, and provide a framework for expressing desire without overstepping social boundaries. A faint aroma of myrrh and rose drifts through a corridor, leading you to a small atrium where a group of Roman women whispers over small cauldrons. They stir mixtures of wine, honey, and powdered roots, each woman focusing on a specific intention: harmony, passion, fidelity, or reconciliation. Some fringe texts even describe the use of animal-derived ingredients, intended to harness vitality or assert dominance in love, but mainstream scholars suggest these were likely symbolic, a theatrical enhancement to the ritual rather than a literal necessity. You pause at the edge of the atrium, inhaling the heady mix of scents and the faint tang of polished marble. You notice that each participant, whether preparing a potion or offering a charm, is deeply engaged in the act of shaping desire. Even if the ingredients themselves are inert, the attention, intention, and social signaling create a palpable energy, a subtle influence on the hearts and minds around them. You realize that Roman love magic is as much about psychology, social maneuvering, and ceremony as it is about any mystical effect. As evening falls over the villa, shadows stretch across the marble floors and the last rays of sunlight gleam off gold and bronze ornaments. The courtyard, once bustling, now feels intimate, filled with the quiet promise of potential connections. Even if no potion truly compels love tonight, the rituals themselves, layered with scent, symbolism, and subtle performance, bind the participants together in hope, anticipation, and the shared language of desire. You take a deep breath, letting the mingled fragrances settle in your senses, feeling an almost electric charge from the centuries of longing embedded in these walls. You step into a mist-laden grove, the air cool and damp against your skin. Moss carpets the ground like a soft, emerald blanket, and the distant sound of a babbling brook lulls you into a slower rhythm. You probably won't survive wandering too far without brushing against brambles or startling some woodland creature, but the allure of hidden knowledge pulls you deeper into the Celtic wildwood. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and share your location and local time if you feel like it. It's fun to imagine who's experiencing this alongside you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's wander further into the story. You notice a circle of standing stones, worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. Here, druids once gathered to craft charms of love and protection. They didn't rely on elaborate glass vials or temple altars. Instead, they harnessed the raw, living energy of the forest itself. Historians still argue whether these rituals were primarily symbolic, or if the druids genuinely believed in their mystical efficacy, but the dedication and precision suggest something more than idle superstition. A low mist curls around the bases of the stones as you step closer. You see bundles of herbs tied with leather thongs, thyme, vervain, and meadowsweet, each chosen for its reputed power to attract love, courage, or fidelity. Some fringe accounts describe adding animal bones or feathers to the mix to call forth the spirits of attraction, though mainstream scholars suggest these elements were more symbolic than literal. Still, the air feels charged, and you can almost sense the careful intention imbued in every bundle. You follow a narrow path to a small clearing where a druidess kneels over a wooden bowl filled with water and crushed petals. She murmurs words in a language you don't recognize, dipping her fingers to trace invisible patterns in the mixture. Water in Celtic ritual symbolized emotion and fluidity, the perfect medium to convey desire or harmony. Nearby, a young couple watches intently, awaiting the outcome. You realize the magic is not just in the ingredients or the spoken words, but in the act of shared attention and belief. The forest is alive with subtle fragrances, wild mint brushing your nose, the earthy smell of damp oak leaves, and a hint of honey-like sweetness from flowering heather. You remember reading that druids often use sensory engagement as a key component of ritual, taste, smell, sight, and sound all intertwined to reinforce intention. Some fringe traditions even suggest that timing rituals according to lunar phases amplified their potency, waxing moon for growth, full moon for fulfillment. Whether true or not, the synchronization of natural cycles with human emotion is striking. Nearby, you spot small charms carved from wood, bone, and stone, tokens of love left on tree branches, under stones, or tucked into the folds of clothing. Each charm carries a silent message, a hope or longing. Some are simple, others elaborate, and a few are even designed to subtly influence social interactions, nudging the beloved toward attention or consideration. Historians still debate whether these charms were truly believed to possess mystical power or functioned mainly as symbolic gestures, yet their widespread use suggests deep cultural significance. As you walk further, you hear the faint crunch of leaves and the whisper of wind through branches. A small group of women is weaving garlands of ivy and wildflowers, chanting softly to invoke attraction and harmony. Some fringe accounts mention the use of certain animal fats or secret oils added to garlands to enhance their effect, though scholars argue these were largely symbolic or placebo elements. You can't help but marvel at the creativity and care embedded in these rituals, a blending of natural observation and imaginative intention. A deer crosses your path, its eyes bright and unafraid. You pause to watch it vanish into the trees, a reminder of the harmony these rituals seek to emulate, a balance of desire, respect, and natural law. The druid's magic, you begin to realize, is about alignment, aligning the self with nature, intention with action, and hope with timing. Even if no supernatural forces intervene, the participants are changed simply through focused engagement and mindful preparation. You step into a sun-scorched marketplace somewhere between the dunes and the distant mountains, the scent of spices, incense, and sun-baked earth filling your nostrils. Traders call out in rhythmic tones, selling everything from vibrant textiles to powders that gleam like gold in the sunlight. You probably won't survive weaving through the throng without bumping into a camel or stepping on a dropped coin, but the lure of hidden knowledge draws you forward. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And post your location and local time. It's always fascinating to imagine who's following along from around the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's continue our journey. You wander toward a narrow tent draped in deep crimson and gold, where the scent of rose, amber, and frankincense mingles with the earthy aroma of crushed roots. A woman sits cross-legged on a woven mat, small bowls of powders, dried petals, and oils arranged meticulously before her. She invites you to observe as she prepares a blend meant to inspire affection and allure. Historians still argue whether these Middle Eastern love rituals had a literal mystical effect or whether they functioned primarily as psychological and social tools, but the care and intention are unmistakable. She begins by sprinkling rose petals into a bronze bowl, their vibrant red a symbol of desire, while murmuring words in an ancient tongue. Honey and pomegranate juice follow, thick and glossy, stirring slowly until the mixture glows softly in the sunlight filtering through the tent. Some fringe traditions suggest adding traces of amber or powdered pearls to the blend, meant to capture attention and admiration, though modern scholars consider this largely symbolic. You can't help but notice the meditative rhythm of her movements, each gesture precise and deliberate. Nearby, a youth watches intently, holding a small vial in his hand. He has been instructed to pour the potion into a cup of tea or wine, ideally when the intended recipient is present. The timing and presentation are considered just as important as the ingredients themselves. Some rituals involve reciting a brief verse at sunset, invoking benevolent spirits to bless the union. You smile at the thought of someone nervously repeating a chant under the gaze of the desert sun, hoping it will sway the heart of another. The marketplace hums with activity around you. Spices from distant lands spill from sacks, their aromas mingling in a chaotic symphony, cinnamon, saffron, and cardamom. Vendors offer talismans carved from amber or turquoise believed to protect lovers from jealousy or infidelity. Fringe texts even describe powders derived from rare flowers or animal parts, claimed to heighten desire or fidelity, though scholars argue the effect was likely symbolic. Still, the persistence of these practices suggests they held deep cultural resonance. You follow a narrow path to a small courtyard where several women are blending oils. Each scent is chosen with precision: rose for attraction, musk for passion, sandalwood for devotion. Some rituals incorporate subtle gestures like anointing the doorway or sprinkling a few drops onto the ground to extend the reach of the charm. You recall that in this region, love magic was often intertwined with daily routines, weaving intention into mundane acts. A faint laugh escapes you as you notice a small cat slinking among the herbs, rumored to carry the potency of the ritual silently on its paws. A stall nearby displays jars of powder labeled with symbols and glyphs you do not fully recognize. Some are intended to inspire fleeting flirtation, others lasting affection. You notice a small bundle of rose, cinnamon, and myrrh tied with a red cord ready to be carried or gifted. Historians still debate whether these powders were genuinely believed to control desire or if they functioned as ritualized tokens for signaling romantic interest, but the artistry and care suggest both symbolic and emotional weight. You watch a woman place a few petals into a bowl of water, whispering a blessing while glancing toward a young man across the courtyard. The act itself, layered with intention, sensory engagement, and performance, embodies the intersection of social interaction and ritual practice. Even if the supernatural effect is uncertain, the participants are transformed, more mindful, more attentive, more connected. You feel a peculiar tingle, as if the energy of centuries of longing is concentrated in this very moment, folding time so past and present brush together. As the sun sinks low over the desert, shadows lengthen and the scents of the marketplace deepen, mingling with the cooling air. You inhale deeply, letting the fragrance of rose, amber, and honey fill your senses. Even if no potion ever truly influences desire, the ritual of creating, observing, and participating in these acts has a gentle, subtle magic of its own. It teaches attention, patience, and intention, qualities as enduring as the shifting dunes around you. You step back, taking in the bustling scene, the colorful textiles, the shimmering powders, and the quiet determination etched on the faces of those weaving spells of affection. Even if nothing is literally enchanted tonight, the human heart, the hopes, the imagination, the subtle interplay of attention is the most potent magic of all. You walk away with the faint perfume of rose and amber lingering in your hair, a reminder that love, desire, and intention have long been intertwined across deserts, cities, and centuries. You find yourself entering a dimly lit apothecary in an ancient Indian city, the air thick with the warm, pungent aroma of turmeric, cardamom, and crushed sandalwood. Sunlight filters through small, lattice windows, casting intricate patterns across earthen jars stacked meticulously along the walls. You probably won't survive navigating this labyrinth without knocking over a vial or spilling powdered herbs, but the curiosity propelling you forward makes each careful step feel like part of a ritual itself. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you haven't yet, post your location and local time. It's always intriguing to know who's journeying alongside us. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's continue weaving through the story. You approach a low wooden table where a practitioner of Ayurvedic arts arranges a rainbow of powders, dried roots, and aromatic oils. Each is selected for its believed effect on love and attraction: saffron for passion, sandalwood for devotion, and rose petals for purity and emotional connection. Historians still argue whether the efficacy of these love elixirs was literal or primarily psychosocial. But the meticulousness with which each ingredient is measured suggests serious intent. She dips her fingers into a shallow bowl of honey and powdered gemstones, stirring slowly while reciting a soft chant in Sanskrit. This, she explains, is a rasyana for enhancing affection, aligning the energies of body, mind, and spirit. Fringe texts suggest adding tiny traces of pearl or coral powder to draw the attention of a particular beloved, though modern scholars often view these ingredients as symbolic, reinforcing intention rather than invoking mystical influence. You watch closely, captivated by the interplay of ritual, scent, and careful motion. Nearby, a young couple observes attentively, one holding a small vial of rose-scented oil, the other a charm carved from coral. The practitioner demonstrates how to anoint a threshold or gift a small portion in tea to encourage attraction. Timing and presentation are considered crucial. Certain hours of the day, phases of the moon, and even astrological alignments are believed to enhance the effectiveness of the elixirs. You chuckle quietly, imagining a nervous suitor calculating planetary positions before offering a cup of tea. You wander further through the shop, brushing your fingers across small bundles of herbs tied with colorful thread: licorice for charm, cardamom for intimacy, and long pepper for courage. Some fringe accounts even include powdered roots of rare plants believed to evoke devotion or obsession. but mainstream scholarship generally interprets these as symbolic, intended to inspire confidence in the user and attention from the beloved. You notice a faint smile playing on the practitioner's lips as she observes your interest. She clearly enjoys guiding novices through the ritual. Across the room, a small clay lamp flickers, its flame casting dancing shadows over rows of jars. You observe bowls filled with honey, milk, and powdered spices, each mixture designed to influence affection subtly. Some recipes require personal items, like a strand of hair or a favorite thread, imbuing the potion with an individualized intention. Historians still debate whether these items were believed to be essential for magical potency, or if they primarily enhance psychological engagement. Either way, the careful inclusion of personal tokens emphasizes the intimacy and specificity of the ritual. The delicate fragrance of rose, jasmine, and sandalwood mingles with the richer, earthier aroma of turmeric and asafoetida. You inhale deeply, savoring the multisensory environment. The practitioner dips a spoon into a deep red mixture, demonstrating how to combine it with honey for an elixir meant to invoke mutual affection. The ritual is slow, deliberate, and elegant, creating an atmosphere that heightens attention, intention, and emotional resonance. Even if the potion itself has no literal effect, the act of preparing it, layered with ritualized care, is transformative. You move toward the back of the shop where small trays of gemstones, garnet, carnelian, and ruby, catch the sunlight streaming through the lattice. Each stone is believed to enhance a particular emotional quality, courage, fidelity, or attraction. Patrons carry these stones in pouches, place them beneath pillows, or wear them as pendants, reinforcing the intent of their rituals throughout daily life. Some fringe texts even describe chanting mantras over the stones to activate their power, though scholars debate whether this was literal or symbolic, a means of focusing attention and intention. A soft breeze enters the shop, carrying with it the scent of blooming jasmine from the courtyard outside. You notice a small copper bowl filled with water and rose petals, a symbolic act of releasing intention into the universe. Participants are instructed to whisper their desires into the water before gently letting it flow away, symbolically sharing hope and longing with the world. The act itself, sensory and deliberate, demonstrates the underlying principle of Indian rasayana. Intention and attention are as potent as any ingredient. As evening falls, the apothecary dims the lamps and the warm fragrance settles over the shop like a soft blanket. Even if no potion ever literally ensnares a heart, the layered rituals, combining scent, touch, intention, and symbolism, leave participants attuned, mindful, and emotionally invested. You step back, letting the subtle perfume of sandalwood and rose linger in your senses, aware that centuries of human yearning, creativity, and ritual precision converge here. Love, desire, and intention have been carefully cultivated, layer upon layer, creating a quiet magic that persists across time. You stroll through a serene Chinese garden, where the soft trickle of water from carved stone fountains mingles with the scent of blooming jasmine and delicate chrysanthemums. The paths are lined with bamboo and carved stone lanterns, their surfaces worn smooth by countless footsteps over centuries. You probably won't survive wandering too far without disturbing a scholar deep in contemplation or a delicate tea set perched precariously on a low table, but the quiet rhythm of the garden draws you forward. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you haven't already, share your location and local time. It's fascinating to imagine the variety of nighttime environments blending with this story. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's continue along the path. You find a small pavilion tucked amid willow trees, where an elderly alchemist arranges delicate porcelain bowls filled with powdered herbs, dried petals, and subtle minerals. In ancient Chinese practice, love potions were often designed to balance yin and yang within both participants, harmonizing energy to create affection, attraction, and emotional resonance. Historians still argue whether these potions were believed to literally manipulate hearts or primarily to cultivate attentiveness, intention, and ritualized expression. But either way, the care and complexity are remarkable. You observe the practitioner carefully weighing powdered ginseng, rose petals, and a hint of cinnabar, a mineral traditionally associated with vitality and desire. Some fringe traditions even included trace amounts of exotic animal parts, though mainstream scholarship suggests these were symbolic, representing potency and connection rather than a literal magical effect. You watch as the alchemist blends the powders with honey and water, chanting softly in an ancient tone that seems to ripple through the bamboo grove. Nearby, a scholar observes a delicate tea ceremony, pouring infused water over petals and herbs in porcelain cups. The ritual, he explains, is designed not only to inspire attraction but also to cultivate mindfulness, attention, and sensitivity to subtle energies. The combination of taste, aroma, and visual beauty engages the senses fully, creating a space where intention and perception are deeply intertwined. You smile at the thought. Love magic here is as much about engagement and presence as it is about mysticism. You wander along a stone path lined with carved guardians, small dragons and phoenixes representing dual forces in life and love. Some alchemists used these symbols alongside their potions, believing that visual cues amplified the balance of energies within the participants. Fringe accounts even suggest that the placement of stones or figurines according to geomantic principles could enhance the effectiveness of the ritual, though scholars debate the literal versus symbolic significance. Either way, the precision and intentionality reflect a culture deeply attuned to the subtle interplay of environment, ritual, and human desire. Across a quiet courtyard, a young couple kneels beside a shallow pool, scattering petals in concentric circles. Each movement is deliberate, accompanied by soft intonations meant to harmonize their energies. Some fringe texts describe the inclusion of personal items, hair, a ribbon, or a small carved talisman to personalize the ritual, ensuring that affection is directed specifically. Historians debate the prevalence of such practices, but the attention to individual intention is unmistakable. The air is heavy with the mingling scents of sandalwood, jasmine, and soft tea leaves. You notice a small bowl of powdered pearls, traditionally believed to calm emotions and enhance fidelity, alongside a delicate mixture of goji berries and chrysanthemum petals intended to stimulate attraction and joy. You inhale, letting the fragrances wash over you. Even if the literal effect is uncertain, the act of engaging all senses and focusing intention has a subtle psychological potency. A soft breeze rustles the willow branches, carrying the scents and quiet whispers of the pavilion across the garden. You watch the alchemist place a tiny vial of ruby-colored liquid beside a cup of tea, explaining that even observing the ritual can influence emotions and awareness. The idea is that intention, attention, and environment together shape perception, a principle that underlies much of Chinese love alchemy. Historians still argue over how widely these beliefs were practiced and the extent to which they were intended as magical versus psychological, but the layering of ritual and focus is clear. As twilight deepens, lanterns glow softly, illuminating carved stone paths and glimmering water. You inhale one last time, savoring the mingling scents of herbs, flowers, and incense. Even if no potion ever literally enchants a heart, the meticulous preparation, attention to balance, and ritualized presence create a subtle, pervasive effect. Love, in this context, is cultivated through harmony, sensory engagement, and intention, a quiet alchemy that persists across centuries, echoing in the movements, scents, and whispered words of those who practiced it. You step back onto the garden path, aware of the lingering fragrance and the gentle hum of evening insects. Even if the magic itself is uncertain, the deliberate weaving of intention, environment, and attention has left a faint, enduring resonance, a reminder that love and longing are crafted as much through human perception as any mystical means. You arrive at a misty, forested glen in medieval Europe, the soft rustle of leaves and distant chirping of birds creating a tranquil soundtrack. Moss covers the ground like a thick green carpet, and the scent of damp earth, wildflowers, and wood smoke mingles in the air. You probably won't survive wandering too far without stepping into a bramble or tripping over a hidden root, but curiosity urges you onward into the heart of the forest. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And post your location and local time just so we can all feel a little more connected on this nighttime journey. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's continue. In the clearing, a small group of women gathers around a low stone table. Bowls of crushed herbs, dried petals, and small vials of oils are arranged meticulously. These are medieval European love potions, combining folklore, natural observation, and a touch of superstition. Historians still argue whether these concoctions were intended as literal magic or largely symbolic, a way for individuals, especially women constrained by social norms, to assert influence over matters of the heart. You observe one woman crushing lavender and vervain with a small mortar and pestle, adding honey and a hint of clove. These ingredients are believed to attract affection and devotion. Nearby, another stirs a mixture of rose petals, powdered root, and a few drops of wine, murmuring words under her breath. Fringe traditions suggest adding powdered pearl or tiny bones, symbolic of vitality and attraction, though modern scholars often see this as theatrical, enhancing the ritualistic aspect rather than producing literal effects. A young man stands hesitantly by the edge of the clearing, clutching a vial of crimson liquid. He's instructed to present it in a specific manner, slipping it into a cup of mead at the right moment or leaving it at the threshold of a desired house. Timing and presentation are just as important as the ingredients themselves. You chuckle quietly, imagining his nervous concentration, knowing that human attention and intention are arguably the most potent parts of any medieval love spell. The air is filled with the heady mix of crushed herbs and burning tallow from nearby lanterns. You notice small charms and amulets scattered on the table, carved stones, small wooden figurines, and braided threads. Each carries a distinct intention: fidelity, attraction, or gentle persuasion. Some fringe texts even describe writing the names of desired lovers on tiny pieces of parchment and burying them beneath the roots of certain trees, allowing nature's force to carry the charm forward. Scholars debate whether these practices were widespread or largely symbolic, but the layered intent is clear. You wander further into the clearing, brushing past bouquets of wildflowers tied with colored ribbons. Heather, rosemary, and yarrow are prominent, each with its own symbolic meaning: devotion, fidelity, courage. Some apothecaries added more exotic ingredients like powdered mandrake root, which had a legendary reputation for influencing desire, but these were rare and often treated with both awe and fear. The combination of sensory engagement, symbolism, and careful preparation is what gives the ritual its strength, even if the supernatural efficacy is questionable. Across the clearing, a small cauldron bubbles gently over a fire. A woman dips a spoon into a ruby-red mixture of rose, honey, and wine, explaining that a few drops can be added to food or drink to inspire affection. Some fringe accounts suggest placing the mixture near a person's pillow or under a chair to exert influence while they sleep, though mainstream historians argue these practices were more about ritualized attention than actual magical control. You quietly admire the devotion, patience, and artistry involved. A breeze rustles the leaves, carrying the mingled fragrances of herbs and smoke. You notice that each participant, whether grinding, stirring, or whispering, is fully absorbed in their task. Even if no potion ever literally bends a heart, the act of creating, focusing intention, and enacting ritual fosters connection, mindfulness, and emotional investment. Love magic in medieval Europe blends psychology, folklore, and human hope in a tangible, almost theatrical way. As twilight deepens, the forest floor darkens and lanterns cast warm, flickering light across the clearing. You inhale deeply, letting the scents and gentle sounds envelop you. Even if no spell directly manipulates desire, the careful layering of ritual, intention, and environment creates a subtle magic, one that operates through attention, imagination, and human expectation. You step back, leaving the clearing with the faint perfume of herbs lingering in your hair and a sense of centuries of hope and longing etched into the very earth beneath your feet. You wander through the twilight streets of a small Renaissance town, the cobblestones cool underfoot, the scent of baked bread, candle wax, and faint incense drifting from open windows. Lanterns glow softly, casting golden pools of light across narrow alleys, and the chatter of townsfolk drifts through the air, mingling with the occasional clatter of a horse's hooves. You probably won't survive wandering without bumping into a street performer or tripping over a stray bundle of herbs, but curiosity nudges you forward, eager to witness the magic of love in this bustling era. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And post your location and local time. It's always fun to imagine people experiencing this alongside you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's follow the story. In a small, half-hidden apothecary tucked between two taverns, a practitioner arranges glass vials and earthen jars on a carved wooden counter. The Renaissance fascination with natural philosophy and alchemy has brought together centuries of magical, medical, and herbal knowledge. Historians still argue whether these love potions were intended to exert real influence over emotions or whether their primary function was psychological, providing confidence and structured ritual to the hopeful suitor. But the care and precision in preparation suggest a serious intent. You watch as she mixes rosewater, honey, and crushed gemstones in a small glass vial. Each ingredient is carefully measured, not just for symbolic significance but also for its aromatic and tactile qualities. Fringe traditions include the use of trace powders derived from exotic plants or even rare minerals, claimed to enhance desire or fidelity, though modern scholarship tends to interpret these as symbolic rather than literal. The practitioner's motions are deliberate, almost meditative, weaving intention into each movement and blend. Across the room, a young apprentice observes, carefully recording measurements, methods, and chants. The documentation of spells and potions reflects the Renaissance appetite for codifying knowledge, both mystical and empirical. Some potions are intended to create attraction, others to inspire devotion or reconcile estranged lovers. Timing, moon phases, and planetary alignments are often incorporated, echoing the alchemical belief that celestial forces influence earthly matters. You smile at the meticulous blending of cosmic theory and human longing. Nearby, small amulets and charms are displayed on velvet cloths, garnet for passion, amber for fidelity, and carnelian for courage. These objects are carried worn or tucked beneath pillows, reinforcing intention throughout daily life. Fringe accounts describe subtle inscriptions or the inclusion of personal items, such as a strand of hair, intended to direct magical influence toward a specific individual. Historians still debate the literal efficacy of these practices, but the psychological and symbolic significance is undeniable. A soft breeze drifts through the open window, mingling with the fragrance of herbs and oils. You notice a vial of deep crimson liquid placed carefully beside a cup of wine, the practitioner explaining that a few drops can subtly enhance attraction when shared thoughtfully. The ritual is slow and deliberate, the combination of scent, color, and intention creating a multisensory experience that engages not just the body but the imagination. You remember that across centuries and continents, similar practices shared this same principle: focused intention combined with sensory ritual. You wander to a quiet corner where small bowls of herbs and petals rest, waiting for their turn in ritual preparation. Lavender, rose, vervain, and rosemary mingle, each chosen for its symbolic and olfactory qualities. Some recipes call for the inclusion of precious stones or rare essences to amplify the effect, while others rely on the patient repetition of incantations and gestures. Fringe texts even describe ritual dances or meditative movements performed while stirring potions, emphasizing the unity of mind, body, and intent. As dusk deepens, the apothecary glows warmly, the air rich with the scent of rose, honey, and soft smoke from a burning tallow lamp. You inhale deeply, letting the fragrances settle on your senses. Even if no potion ever directly enchants a heart, the act of creating, observing, and performing these rituals shapes attention, intention, and emotional resonance. Love in the Renaissance and beyond is cultivated through preparation, ritual, and shared experience, a delicate alchemy of human perception, culture, and hope. Walking out into the evening streets, you feel the lingering presence of centuries of longing, creativity, and ritualized devotion. The soft clatter of cobblestones and the faint fragrance of herbs in the night air remind you that across time and space, humans have sought to shape desire, nurture connection, and weave intention into the everyday. Even if magic itself is uncertain, the practices endure, offering subtle, timeless insight into the heart's intricate workings. In Mesopotamia, athletic contests often began with religious significance. You stumble into a square in the scent of baked clay and incense mixing in the heat, where young men line up to sprint toward a carved stone altar. Historians still argue whether these races were primarily ritualistic or genuinely competitive, but either way, they served as early rites of passage. You notice the playful taunting, the low laughter mingling with solemn chants, and it hits you how human and universal the thrill of competition really is, even 5,000 years ago. Meanwhile, in ancient Egypt, the Nile provided both playground and training ground. You wade along riverbanks where swimmers dash through currents, their arms slicing water that smells faintly of papyrus and mud. A fringe tidbit: some Egyptian athletes supposedly coated their bodies in crocodile dung to protect their skin from the sun. Ancient sunscreen or sheer bravado, historians still debate. Imagine the smell, the sticky texture, the audacity. You laugh quietly to yourself because modern sunscreen feels ridiculously tame in comparison. Foot races, wrestling bouts, and spear-throwing competitions were often accompanied by music, clapping, and chanting from local communities. You find yourself caught in the rhythm, toes tapping on uneven ground, heart sinking to ancient drums. These events weren't just for the athletes, they were social magnets, drawing crowds who gossiped, cheered, and sometimes even bet small livestock or grain. You might imagine a local merchant shaking his head as a young sprinter collapses, wiping sweat from his brow and muttering about lost barley. And while these contests were clearly for sport, there was a performative edge. You duck under a makeshift banner as a wrestler attempts a move, sensing how these early competitions blended spectacle with preparation for war. Sumerians, for instance, trained soldiers under the guise of games, practicing agility, stamina, and strategy while keeping the public entertained. You think of it like an ancient CrossFit, minus the smoothie bar and spandex, and you can't help but grin at the practicality. Rituals were tightly woven with the contests. Festivals coincided with sowing or harvest, blending seasonal cycles with human competition. You might stumble upon a local priest sprinkling barley around a wrestling pit, mumbling prayers for favor in the next battle or ensuring victory in a race. Some fringe interpretations suggest these gestures weren't purely symbolic. Tiny grains were believed to influence fortune itself. You imagine stepping lightly around scattered seeds, careful not to disturb fate itself, and chuckle at the seriousness layered over such simple actions. The physicality of these contests is striking. You lean against a sun-warmed stone, feeling the vibrations of a distant foot race, and consider the sheer athleticism required. Sprinting across uneven terrain, wrestlers grappling on packed earth, swimmers cutting through the Nile currents, all of it demanded endurance, strategy, and surprisingly sophisticated knowledge of body mechanics. Historians still argue whether ancient athletes were naturally gifted or meticulously trained, but one thing is clear: their commitment was staggering. Quirky as it may seem, some competitions included bizarre challenges. You squint at a group of participants balancing jugs of water while sprinting, a contest not merely of speed but of balance, stamina, and grace under pressure. Spectators cheer, laugh, and occasionally groan at the inevitable spills. You can almost feel the splash hitting your sandals, a reminder that ancient games were as unpredictable as they were structured. As you trudge past the various arenas, you notice that children often mimic adult contests. Small-footed and eager, they toss sticks, run short sprints, and practice wrestling holds with giggles replacing tension. It's endearing, and it underscores how sports weren't merely adult affairs, they were community threads, weaving together generations in playful yet disciplined movement. Finally, consider the rewards. Beyond the obvious trophies of honor, perhaps a wreath of reeds or a ceremonial cup, some athletes earned social recognition, elevated status, or even practical rewards like land, livestock, or exemption from labor. You watch an older man award a sprinter with a small clay cup and imagine the pride swelling in the young athlete's chest. Sports in this earliest form were already a microcosm of society, teaching strength, perseverance, and the delicate dance between competition and community. You trudge along a sun-warmed path that leads to a Greek gymnasium, the air buzzing faintly with the scent of olive oil, sweat and dust stirred up by hundreds of pounding feet. Hey, it's not quite the cushioned yoga studio you might imagine: stone floors, open courtyards, and minimal shade. Yet there's a rhythm here, a deliberate flow of movement that feels almost hypnotic, like the pulse of the city itself. You probably won't survive this if you think casual stretching counts as training, because here, every motion is measured, observed, and critiqued. So before you get too cozy, make sure you remember to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you haven't yet, post your location and local time. It's fun to imagine someone experiencing the same sleepy stories while nestled somewhere under the Mediterranean sun. Now dim the lights, maybe hum along with the soft fan breeze, and follow me deeper into the routines of Greek athletic life. Walking past the entrance, you see men of all ages preparing for exercise, their bodies oiled and glinting in the sun, muscles taut and defined. The gymnasium isn't just about sport, it's a social hub, a philosophical laboratory where young men learn ethics, rhetoric, and strategy alongside wrestling or discus throwing. Historians still argue whether the intellectual lessons were truly equal in importance to the physical or merely performative, but the blend is unmistakable. You pause to watch a coach or pay-to-tribe gesturing sharply as a boy attempts a wrestling hold. The grip is off, the stance wrong, and the trainer's voice rises not angrily but with precise insistence. Fringe accounts suggest that some trainers used mildly painful corrective tools, like flexible sticks or sand-filled bags, claiming they help refine balance and reflexes. You shiver slightly at the idea, then shake your head. Modern gym etiquette feels luxuriously tame in comparison. The gymnasium's layout is curious. Open-air courtyards for running, covered spaces for combat training, and small lecture areas where philosophy mingles with physicality. You drift through these spaces, toes brushing over worn stone, imagining the scent of heated clay mingled with olive oil and chalky dust from the wrestling pits. Exercises aren't random. They're part of a carefully considered progression designed to develop speed, strength, endurance, and coordination. You notice a line of athletes practicing the javelin, throwing in synchrony like dancers. Beyond the obvious physical drills, some athletes practiced rhythmic movement almost dance-like to enhance coordination and agility. You stumble across a group performing what appears to be a ceremonial warm-up, leaping, spinning, and striking poses while chanting names of gods. Historians still debate whether these rituals were primarily for religious devotion, muscle conditioning, or a bit of showmanship, but watching it, you feel the energy ripple through the courtyard. Water plays a subtle but vital role. You see shallow basins where athletes rinse off sweat and oil between bouts, sometimes dipping in for brief immersion to cool muscles. Fringe accounts hint that some gymnasia added aromatic herbs to the water, believing that rosemary, thyme, or mint could sharpen focus or enhance strength. You crouch to touch the cool liquid, imagining the faint herbal scent lifting into the warm air. Social interaction is woven tightly into the routine. You overhear debates about strategy, comments on posture, and playful taunts between athletes, all interspersed with bouts of laughter. Young men test each other in wrestling matches, their triumphs and minor humiliations equally important for learning. It's communal, competitive, and occasionally theatrical. You grin at a mock challenge over who can throw a discus the farthest, recognizing the timeless universality of boasting among athletes. Remember the earlier mention of oil? It's everywhere here, a slick, gleaming layer on skin meant to prevent friction during contact sports, but it also gives the courtyard a glowing warmth under the afternoon sun. Some fringe interpretations even claim the oil was mixed with fine sand or herbs for better grip or minor exfoliation. You touch your own hand to the smooth stone wall, half expecting it to leave a trace of sheen and smell of rosemary. Finally, as shadows lengthen across the courtyard, you witness the intersection of mind and body in a subtle, almost unspoken way. Philosophical discussions pause for a foot race, wrestling match, or discus throw, then resume seamlessly, suggesting that in Greek gymnasia, the cultivation of intellect and physique were inseparable. You step back, watching the sun cast elongated shapes of oiled, muscular forms across ancient stones, and sense the enduring beauty of disciplined, communal athletic pursuit. You trudge along a winding dirt path that leads you toward Olympia, where the scent of olive groves mingles with the distant hum of preparation for something monumental. Hey, tonight we're stepping into the world of the original Olympic Games, where dust, sweat, and divine expectation collide in a spectacle that has echoed through millennia. You probably won't survive this if you think modern sports are intense, because here victory isn't just pride, it's a sacred affair, a direct offering to Zeus himself. So before you settle into the story, remember to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And post your location and local time in the comments, because imagining you somewhere beneath these sun-scorched skis adds a strange but comforting intimacy. Now, dim the lights, maybe let a gentle fan hum, and trudge with me into the origins of the Olympics. The earliest Olympic Games date back to 776 BCE, though historians still argue whether these were truly the very first or part of an older, fragmented tradition of athletic festivals across Greece. You trudge past stone markers indicating winners of foot races, imagining how young athletes, barely out of boyhood, trained with almost fanatical dedication. Their muscles gleam in the sunlight, bodies old like the Greek gymnasia, yet here the stakes feel immeasurably higher. Preparation was rigorous. Athletes often spent months in strict training camps, following precise diets of barley, figs, and occasionally meat, all while maintaining the ritual purity expected before competing. Fringe accounts suggest that some competitors even refrained from certain foods or sexual activity to sharpen their performance, behaviors historians still debate as genuine or symbolic. You shake your head at the intensity. Modern pre-game superstitions suddenly feel laughably mild. The events themselves were a mix of spectacle and skill. You trudge alongside runners dashing across the stadium, their feet pounding the earth in rhythmic insistence. Wrestling, pancration, a brutal combination of boxing and wrestling, and chariot races test every ounce of strength, speed, and cunning. Pancration in particular had almost no rules, and you wince at the thought, imagining sparring partners grappling with little more than strategy and raw determination to guide them. Victory meant more than a laurel wreath. Champions gained civic acclaim, lifelong honor, and sometimes even exemptions from taxes or free meals for life. You witness a young victor, chest heaving, accepting his prize, and can almost feel the electric hum of communal admiration. Fringe stories hint at bribery, political maneuvering, and clandestine sabotage. Historians still argue how often these games of honor truly remained untainted. The religious aspect is omnipresent. Altars to Zeus dominate the landscape, where sacrifices punctuate competitions. You trudge past priests offering prayers, imagining the smoke curling upward, carrying hopes, fears, and gratitude for athletic excellence. Ritual intertwines with sport, reminding you that in ancient Greece human achievement was inseparable from divine favor. Interestingly, athletes competed nude, a practice thought to honor the gods and celebrate the human body in its idealized form. Fringe interpretations suggest this nudity was also a practical measure for freedom of movement, though the spectacle undeniably amplified communal admiration. You glance at sculpted forms lining the pathways, imagining the same blend of awe and jealousy in the crowd's eyes as the athletes sprint past. Chariot races dominate the hippodrome, their thunderous pace contrasting with the measured steps of runners and wrestlers. Teams of horses and drivers maneuver with precise timing, sometimes veering dangerously close to disaster. Historians still argue how much the games emphasize spectacle over skill, and watching a chariot careen past, you can almost feel the tension crackle in the crowd. Small rituals punctuate every moment. Competitors anoint their bodies, warm their muscles, and chant short invocations. Spectators wave olive branches, offering encouragement and perhaps subtle pressure. You notice children mimicking the runners in playful sprints, laughing and colliding, unaware that one day this mimicry might inspire the next generation of Olympians. Finally, the communal energy is palpable. You trudge past cheering citizens, visiting merchants and priests, feeling how the festival united disparate city-states in a shared rhythm of celebration, competition, and devotion. The games are more than physical contests, they're social glue, religious homage, and a stage upon which human skill dances with divine expectation. As the sun casts long shadows over the stadium, you sense that this blend of awe, effort, and communal thrill is the essence of the Olympic spirit itself. You trudge along the sun-baked roads of ancient Rome, the air thick with dust, smoke, and the faint tang of sweat and livestock. Hey, tonight we wander into arenas where entertainment teeters on the edge of obsession, and the roar of the crowd drowns out reason as much as it amplifies spectacle. You probably won't survive this if you think watching a football game is intense, because here, the stakes are life, death, and the dramatic whims of emperors. So before you settle in, remember to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, post your location and local time. It's oddly comforting to imagine someone listening from a quiet modern apartment while the Colosseum still echoes in our minds. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for a gentle hum, and let's navigate the frenzy of Roman sports. The Colosseum towers before you, an engineering marvel of stone and ambition, designed to house tens of thousands of spectators. Historians still argue whether the initial purpose leaned more toward civic cohesion or sheer spectacle, but the sheer scale suggests both. You trudge through corridors, your footsteps echoing on smooth stone, imagining the scent of leather armor, dust, and torches mingling in the air. Gladiatorial contests dominate the arena. You watch, careful to step back, as combatants wield swords, tridents, and shields with practiced precision. Some fringe accounts suggest certain gladiators specialized in exotic weapons or even theatrical styles, turning death matches into choreographed performances for the crowd. You squint at the tension, half amused, half awed by the mix of brutality and artistry. Chariot races in the Circus Maximus provide a different kind of thrill. You trudge to a vantage point as quadrigi thunder across the track, horses snorting and hooves clanging on stone. Drivers lean low, clutching reins as their vehicles tilt dangerously close to disaster. Historians still argue whether these races were more about skill, spectacle, or sheer chaos, but the audience seems equally entranced by every near miss. Venues weren't limited to violent spectacle. Athletic competitions like foot races, wrestling, and throwing contests persisted from Greek traditions, often included as preludes to larger events. You stumble across athletes racing across the sand, their old bodies glinting in the sun, while vendors hawk figs, wine, and woven garlands to spectators. Fringe tidbits suggest that some Roman athletes consumed energy-boosting concoctions of honey and fermented grape juice, an early form of sports supplements historians still debate for efficacy. Animal involvement was ubiquitous. You glimpse exotic beasts, lions, elephants, even crocodiles, released into arenas for hunting spectacles or venations. The roar of the crowd rises as the animals charge or clash, and you shiver at the raw unpredictability. Historians still argue how often these hunts veered into sheer spectacle rather than genuine sport, but the thrill is undeniable. Training was rigorous. Gladiators practiced in ludi-specialized schools where combat techniques, stamina, and endurance were honed. You pass through an open courtyard where trainees spar and wrestle, instructors shouting corrections. Fringe reports hint at secret diets designed for muscle bulk or speed, some even involving milk baths or herb-infused oils. You shake your head, imagining yourself enduring a month of this, definitely not a modern gym experience. Crowd participation was theatrical. Spectators waved banners, shouted approval, or even voted on a defeated gladiator's fate. You trudge along the outer ring, imagining the tension, the gasp of a near-fatal strike, the roar if a fallen combatant was spared. This interactive dynamic blurs the line between sport and social theater in ways historians still debate. Even minor competitions carried symbolic weight. Foot races or javelin contests could commemorate military victories, honor deceased leaders, or celebrate religious festivals. You glimpse an olive wreath being handed to a victor, and imagine the weight of pride and obligation that accompanied such honors. Fringe accounts suggest some athletes trained secretly to mimic rival techniques, a reminder that competitiveness in Rome extended beyond the arena into subtle psychological games. Finally, as the sun dips low, shadows stretching across the Colosseum's arches, you notice the hum of excitement fading into reflection. The arenas were more than mere entertainment. They were arenas of skill, courage, and social orchestration, a place where athleticism, ritual, and spectacle fused into something both awe-inspiring and morally complex. You trudge back along the cobbled streets, carrying the echo of cheers and the visceral thrill of Roman ambition deep into your imagination. You trudge across the vast landscapes of ancient Persia, India, and China, feeling the subtle shift in climate, terrain, and culture as you move through time and space. Hey, tonight we explore martial traditions where sport, ritual, and combat blur so seamlessly that you might question whether anyone was really playing at all. You probably won't survive this if you assume all ancient sports were merely games of fun here. They trained warriors, displayed courage, and sometimes even dictated political influence. So before you settle into the story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. and share your location and local time in the comments. It's oddly satisfying imagining someone listening from a distant corner of the world as we wander through these ancient practices. Now dim the lights, maybe let a soft fan hum, and follow me through the combative athletic life of the East. In Persia, athletic contests were tightly linked to martial preparation. You trudge past a parade ground where young men swing maces, wield spears, and practice mounted combat. Historians still argue whether these displays were ceremonial, practical, or both, but it's clear the training served dual purposes: military readiness and societal spectacle. Fringe accounts suggest some warriors even practiced on unstable platforms or with sand-filled bags strapped to limbs to build strength and agility, a sort of ancient resistance training. You grimace at the thought, imagining every slip as a lesson in perseverance. In India, wrestling or Malayatta dominated the physical culture, blending technique, endurance, and philosophy. You step into a mud pit where competitors grapple, their limbs entwined in a fluid dance of strategy and strength. Historians still debate the degree to which religious or spiritual beliefs influenced these matches, but the precision of movement is unmistakable. Fringe practices included ritual anointments with herbal pastes to prevent injury, which also gave a distinctive smell to the arena: earthy, spicy, and invigorating. You inhale deeply, imagining the intoxicating aroma mingling with exertion and dust. China offers a fascinating blend of martial sport and ritualized combat. You trudge along a bamboo training ground where students practice archery, swordplay, and acrobatics, often synchronized with rhythmic drum beats. Historians still argue whether these early displays were purely military exercises or also performed as court entertainment, but either way, the coordination and discipline are remarkable. Fringe accounts suggest practitioners sometimes trained under extreme conditions: cold mornings, heavy armor, or elevated platforms to condition mind and body simultaneously. You shiver at the thought, shuffling carefully across the imaginary frost in your mind. Combat wasn't the only form of sport. Persian polo or chogan involved teams on horseback using mallets to maneuver a ball across sprawling fields. You trudge alongside galloping riders, feeling the tension of balance, precision, and split-second decision-making. Historians still argue whether the game evolved primarily as military training or leisure, but the skill involved is undeniable. Fringe accounts even suggest that royalty sometimes disguised themselves to play incognito, blending competition with intrigue. You grin at the idea of kings stealthily riding among commoners, whacking balls with wooden mallets. Weapons training often doubled as entertainment. You trudge past dueling exhibitions where swords clash, shields rattle, and spectators cheer not only for victory but for style and technique. Historians still debate how ritualized versus practical these contests were, and watching the precision of strikes you understand why. Fringe reports hint that some masters used herbal infusions or oils to improve grip or reduce fatigue, an ancient performance enhancer of sorts. You imagine the smell of sweat mingled with sage, resin, or other botanical concoctions as the sun warms the courtyard. Interestingly, in some cultures, competitions included strategic games that simulated battle. You trudge over a sand table where generals in training maneuver miniatures representing troops, combining foresight, probability, and anticipation. Historians still argue whether these were meant purely as exercises or as early forms of public entertainment, but they certainly honed mental agility alongside physical skill. Fringe stories suggest that these exercises occasionally determined promotions or status within military hierarchies, adding weight to each calculated move. Spectator culture is surprisingly similar across regions. Villagers, soldiers, and nobility gather, cheering, jeering, and occasionally betting on outcomes. You trudge along the edge of a cheering crowd, noting the laughter, tension, and rivalry that transcend cultural boundaries. Fringe accounts hint at ritualized shouting or coordinated clapping designed to encourage warriors or even psych out competitors, a form of early psychological sportsmanship. Training often integrated nature itself. You step alongside rivers in India, marshes in Persia, and rugged hills in China, observing athletes running, swimming, or maneuvering across uneven terrain. Historians still debate whether these exercises were practical military preparations, religious devotion, or purely aesthetic displays, but watching them, you can feel the blend of necessity and artistry. Fringe accounts suggest that certain herbs or plant extracts were used to fortify endurance or sharpen reflexes, nature itself becoming a performance partner. Finally, ritual and philosophy thread through every activity. You trudge past silent moments of prayer, bowing, or contemplation before a contest begins, sensing that sport here is more than physical, it's moral, social, and spiritual. Each strike, throw, or sprint carries meaning beyond mere competition. As the sun dips behind distant mountains, you feel a quiet connection to the countless generations who trained, competed, and celebrated in these lands, leaving echoes of discipline, courage, and communal thrill behind. You trudge along the riverbanks and shorelines of ancient civilizations, the cool splash of water lapping at your feet, the earthy scent of reeds and mud filling your senses. Hey, tonight we dive into the world of aquatic contests, where strength, coordination, and a touch of daring define the games. You probably won't survive this if you assume water sports are modern luxuries, because here athleticism flows as freely as the rivers themselves, and failure could mean humiliation or worse. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And post your location and local time. Imagining you somewhere beside a river or pond listening adds a comforting intimacy. Now dim the lights, maybe let a gentle fan hum, and wade with me into the aquatic athletic traditions of the ancient world. Rivers, lakes, and coastal waters were natural arenas for competition. In Egypt, you trudge along the Nile's banks, observing swimmers racing from one papyrus-strewn shore to another. Historians still argue whether these events were purely sport or tied to religious festivals honoring river deities, but the fervor is undeniable. Fringe accounts suggest that some swimmers coated their bodies in animal fats or oils to glide faster, a slippery yet effective strategy. You wince at the thought of slipping into the muddy water, imagining the effort required to maintain speed and direction. Rowing contests dominate other civilizations. You stumble onto the Tiber River in Rome, where teams of oarsmen synchronize their strokes with military precision. Spectators cheer from riverbanks and temporary bleachers, creating a symphony of encouragement and tension. Historians still debate how much training relied on raw strength versus practiced rhythm, but the spectacle itself is mesmerizing. Fringe reports suggest that some teams dyed their oars with natural pigments to intimidate rivals, psychology woven into physical exertion. Naval competitions also test ingenuity and teamwork. You trudge along the coast of ancient Greece, witnessing triremes maneuver in tight formations, racing not only for speed but for strategy and precision. Fringe tales claim that crews practiced under simulated combat conditions, adding elements of evasion or obstacle navigation to the race. Historians still argue whether these contests were mostly ceremonial or genuine skill tests, but the tension in the air is palpable. Swimming contests weren't always solo affairs. You notice tandem swimming and relay-style events in Mesopotamia, where coordination between participants determines success. Historians still debate whether these were community exercises or competitive spectacles, but you can see the joy and struggle intertwined as teams push through currents, their muscles straining, skin slick with water and sweat. Fringe accounts suggest competitors occasionally used reed or leather paddles for leverage, a primitive but ingenious form of assisted swimming. Spectators played an interactive role. Children mimic swimmers and rowers along riverbanks, tossing small pebbles and cheering. Vendors sell refreshments, and priests sometimes sprinkle water from sacred rivers onto competitors for luck. You trudge past these rituals, noting how seamlessly culture, religion, and sport intertwine. Fringe interpretations even suggest that some ceremonial acts, like offering libations mid-race, were believed to influence currents or tide, blending superstition with athletic endeavor. Boat races often coincided with festivals, combining entertainment with celebration of local gods or heroes. You watch as crews glide across shimmering waters, their chants and oar strokes synchronized to create rhythm and unity. Historians still argue whether speed or style mattered more, but the artistry and athleticism are impossible to ignore. Fringe accounts claim some boats were deliberately weighted or unbalanced to test skill and adaptability, a trick that adds tension and excitement. Safety, or lack thereof, adds an element of daring. You imagine a swimmer misjudging a current, oarsmen colliding, or a boat tipping in shallow rapids. Spectators gasp, cheer, and occasionally intervene, creating a dynamic interplay of risk, skill, and communal engagement. Historians still debate how often these events led to serious injury versus celebrated heroism, but the potential danger clearly heightened the spectacle.